A cold and rainy start to the week. How long these showers will last and when milder temperatures return. A violent end to the weekend. 2 teens hurt and 1 man killed in a triple shooting. Our team is live with what police are saying and how state lawmakers plan to address juvenile justice.
If the election was held today, would you vote for Brandon Scott?
No.
Is Mayor Scott losing voters' trust? Fox 45 News examines how his re-election bid could depend on residents' belief that he can stop the bloodshed on city streets.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
We consider ourselves very, very fortunate. I think this thing missed our house by feet. Our neighbors across the street got it a lot worse than we did.
A destructive storm system on the move as we come on the air today. You're looking at scenes out of Oklahoma and also Kansas, where a number of tornadoes were reported overnight. More than a dozen people are hurt and hundreds of structures are damaged.
That line of storms has its eyes set on our region now. You're looking at live pictures outside Baltimore and Towson. This weather maker will kick off another roller coaster weather week for us. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. You'll need to keep those winter coats and your umbrellas close by all week because the weather will take us on a bumpy ride again.
If only we could get 79 degrees,
right?
Though. I don't think that's in the cards. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers here with a first look at our forecast. Jonathan.
Yeah, it looks like there is somewhat of a warm-up this week. It's more roller coaster weather like we've been used to the past couple of weeks. But taking a look at what's happening right now, we do have a little bit of rain that's been kind of traipsing across Baltimore and now points north and east. And we'll continue to see more of that come in from the west. You can see they're out towards the Blue Ridge Mountains and also especially the Appalachians getting a little bit of that kind of chilly rain. And we'll continue again with that risk of some rain overnight into early tomorrow morning. You can see it here through about 5:45 a.m. Still some sprinkles and spritzes that will be left around. I think by about midnight tonight, it kind of reduces to drizzle, but I'm going to let you know when we could have highs reaching the 60s once again around here, and if it's going to come with rain. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
Jonathan, thank you. Over the weekend, we saw some flurries in our area. This was the scene in Parkville, and we want you to help us tell the weather stories in your area. When it's safe to do so, send us a picture or video through Chime In. Head to foxbaltimore.com/chime in.
He was everything. Right when I heard that he died, I shut down.
The community gathers last night to remember Trayshawn Harmon, a 17-year-old Baltimore teen shot and killed last week near Towson Town Center. Now, his death illustrates the continued struggle with violence.
Just yesterday in Baltimore, 2 people were killed. One of them, a 21-year-old who was shot along with 2 teenagers at an apartment complex in northeast Baltimore. Alexa Ashwell joins us live with the latest on this investigation. Alexa?
Yes, Kai, Mary, just hours ago, the Baltimore Police Department identifying this victim killed as 21-year-old Mason Kelly. As you mentioned, 2 teens also injured in this shooting. Right now, Baltimore police still piecing together what they believe led up to it. Take a look at video we shot. We went back to the scene. This is the Sinclair Gate Apartments in northeast Baltimore. According to police, just before 6, an officer who was working a crime suppression assignment, they say, heard gunshots and drove towards the back of the complex. There, police say an officer witnessed a man firing a gun and later found 3 males with gunshot wounds. A 21-year-old was killed. The 2 other victims, ages 18 and 19, rushed to area hospitals. Right now, police say it's unclear if the gunman the officer witnessed is in fact the person who shot the victims. Another big question centers on motive. What led up to this shooting?
We say it over and over again that people are solving their conflicts using gun violence. People are using guns, and we talk about the prevalence of guns in our city, the ease of access.
Police have not yet provided a suspect description. No arrests have been made. Again, as we mentioned, 2 teens yet again involved in the violence. We're taking a closer look at legislation on the table in Annapolis as it pertains to juvenile justice. We'll have that coming up at 5. For now, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Well, right now, there is a new push to bring the Baltimore Police Department back under local control. City Councilman Robert Stokes will introduce a resolution calling on lawmakers in Annapolis to take action immediately. Jeff Abel joins us live with more. Jeff?
Well, as you know, in November, voters voted overwhelmingly to give the city control of its police department. But now, some 3 months later, the city still doesn't have control of its police department. As you know, Baltimore is still one of 2 jurisdictions in the country where the state controls its local police department. In November, 82% of voters voted to give the city control. But earlier this month, the mayor suggested that the move could be delayed as late as next year. And that has many city leaders drawing fire tonight. They are urging the state to make the final change to the charter to get this move happening. One of the people behind the resolution that'll be at the city council is Councilman Stokes. Councilman, what's the need for this resolution tonight?
Well, again, you said over 82% of residents voted to make it this Baltimore City control the police department. And right now, it's like in between. The state don't control it now. The city don't control it because Section 2, Article 27, we need the General Assembly to implement that and give us full control of the Baltimore City Police Department. Senator Jill Carter and Delegate Smith are introducing it on the House side and the Senate side, so we have full control. Right now, we do not have it.
Do we know what the delay is? I mean, when voters speak, it seems no one seems to be listening after all.
Well, I listen, but I don't know what the delay is, but some residents, some delegates in Annapolis want to either do it December this year or next year. We saying we want it done by June or implemented by June. So again, Senator Jill Carter and Delegate Smith is going to push it out so we can get it done for June of 2023.
Again, the resolution going before the council here momentarily. We will let you know how it goes. For now, we're live at City Hall. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
All right, Jeff and Councilman Stokes, thank you. Some new information just into the newsroom as a federal judge sets a date for Marilyn Mosby's trial. Jury selection is set to start on October 31st. The trial itself will begin November 2nd. The former city state's attorney faces 4 federal charges related to vacation home purchases in Florida, including perjury and making false statements on a loan application.
It's election day for some voters in Chicago tomorrow, but for voters here, next year there could be a change in when those ballots will be filled out. With election season around the corner, some experts believe Mayor Brandon Scott could be on shaky ground come re-election time. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live with how the outcome in Chicago's election could be an indicator for things to come here. Mackenzie?
Yeah, guys, so crime is atop of the list for priorities for voters all across the country, especially when we see in cities where public safety is really a concern. And as for Mayor Brandon Scott, who made public safety a cornerstone of his campaign, another term in office may really depend on how much voters trust him to turn things around in the city, where we continue to see more and more people get shot and killed. The bloodshed in Baltimore continues to spill in streets all over the city. Evidence markers, crime scene tape, and Mayor Brandon Scott's frustrations.
Folks have something to say. Get your ass out there on the street. Walk with We Are Us. Do something. Don't tweet. Don't talk. Don't go to Fox 45. Everybody has to do something.
When are we going to have a conversation about how everybody, including your station, can play a part in reducing violence instead of spreading this hatred, spreading this violence, spreading these hashtags, spreading all the nonsense that we see?
People are dying over dumb, and that's the reality.
Have become common.
After a while, you can show a certain amount of frustration.
Political analyst John Deedy says voters are only willing to wait so long.
At a certain point, you also say, well, what are you going to do about the problem?
And it's that question that has voters across the country looking to their leaders, too. In Chicago, incumbent Mayor Lori Lightfoot facing a 9-person election dominated by crime. According to Chicago PD, 2021 hit a 25-year high with 797 people killed.
If I was Mayor Scott, I'd be paying close attention to how things work out in Chicago.
But it's not just Chicago. Crime is top of mind for voters nationwide, and elected leaders are being put on notice. New Orleans mayor facing a recall. San Francisco's progressive district attorney ousted last year, fueled by frustration over public safety. More than 70% of Baltimoreans voting against former top prosecutor Marilyn Mosby and her progressive prosecution policies.
If Lori Lightfoot doesn't make the runoff, That's a 5-alarm fire for the mayor. That should be a warning sign.
Meanwhile, Mayor Scott says he's committed to seeking another term. Does that mean you are running for re-election? Is that a commitment?
No, I am.
His campaign coffer, flush, sitting on more than $450,000. But the issues for people in Baltimore are real. Even last year, voters already frustrated with the performance by the mayor. If the election was held today, would you vote for Brandon Scott?
No. No, I wouldn't.
Especially since this campaign promised
I will aim to reduce homicides by 15% each year in my term, getting us below 300 homicides in my first year.
has yet to come true. And the people getting shot and pulling the trigger are getting younger.
A lot more people who are getting killed are people who should be in school.
To date, 5 kids under 18 have been gunned down in Baltimore, 18 others shot and survived. Meanwhile, the triggers continue to be pulled and communities forever shaped by gun violence, while politicians make pleas with the community to step up and be better. Now, it's unclear when the 2024 primary election will take place. Right now, it's scheduled to happen during Passover. Mayor Brandon Scott and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski have asked state leaders to move the election. And we are learning today that House Speaker Adrian Jones, along with Baltimore City Senator and Senate President Bill Ferguson, say they will work with the State Board of Elections to find a new date to ensure everyone can participate. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. And that brings us to our question of the day. If elections were held today, would you vote for Mayor Scott for re-election? That poll just went live. You can weigh in at foxbaltimore.com. A push to raise Maryland's minimum wage to $15 an hour in a matter of months. We're live in Annapolis with the debate for and against that move.
Visiting the crime scene coming up, new developments in the trial of Alex Murdaugh.
And are schools in America more segregated now than ever? Why some are saying yes, and the possible fallout.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
Happening tomorrow, the U.S. Supreme Court begins to hear arguments on President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program. The plan, which cancels up to $20,000 of student debt for each qualified borrower, has been on hold as it makes its way through the courts. Two cases are in front of the justices now. Plaintiffs in both cases argue the government doesn't have the authority to cancel loan debt under the proposed rules of the program. But the Biden administration argues that a 2003 law gives them that power in the event of a national emergency. It's unclear when the court will make its decision.
Tomorrow, the Baltimore City School Board is set to decide the fate of the Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys. That school is at risk of losing its charter over what the school calls technicalities. City School CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises is recommending the school stay open, saying it's improved. Despite that, the board could not reach a decision during a meeting last week. Supporters are urging the board to keep the school open.
They have a faculty that really cares strongly about them. They have many young Black professionals in the school building, which is unfortunately a rarity across the system. Our schools are not turning around overnight. We have dozens of schools in Baltimore City, for example, 23 schools that no one is at proficiency in math.
Well, that was former Baltimore City Councilman Carl Stokes. He also founded and ran a charter school several years ago that was closed. Tonight, the case will be made on why America's public schools are more segregated today than at any point in the late 1960s.
It is a warning former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer issued back in 2007, saying taking away court oversight is a decision the nation will come to regret.
We're joined in studio right now by Thiru Vignaraja. He's a former clerk for Justice Breyer. Thiru, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you wrote the introduction to this edition of Justice Breyer's original dissent, breaking the promise of Brown, the resegregation of America's schools. And we want to point out, of course, Brown was argued by the late, great Baltimore Justice Thurgood Marshall, who it was Brown versus Board of Topeka, Kansas, as you well know. You're kind of walking here in the shadow of a giant.
Absolutely. I mean, Thurgood Marshall was a graduate of Frederick Douglass High School here in Baltimore, and he'd be so proud that we're still talking about it, but I think he'd be ashamed of the fact that we have not made much progress. I mean, the worst kept secret in America is perhaps how segregated our public schools remain. Out of a couple dozen high schools here in Baltimore, all but 4 of them are 90 to 100% Black. Half of them are 99 and 100% African American, and that is not what the promise of Brown was meant to be. And this is not just a Baltimore problem, it's a national problem, but Baltimore is an exceptional example of it.
And Thiru, you also said Baltimore City is the example of what Justice Breyer was warning about. Explain that to us.
Yeah, you're seeing all of these problems, what Councilman Stokes referenced about 23 schools not having any kids in math proficiency, all of these schools having so many struggles. Well, the overwhelming majority of the schools that we're talking about are schools that today are as hyper-segregated as they were in 1968, schools that literally have classrooms without a single white student. That is not what Thurgood Marshall was fighting for. That's not what he was arguing for. That's not what Brown versus Board of Education promised to the nation and to the children of Baltimore City. But here we are in 2023 with virtually every high school in Baltimore City as hyper-segregated as it was before Brown was even decided.
Thiru, now you're kicking off a book signing tour. I want you to tell us about that. But can you reflect on this for a moment? You're talking about some of the oversight being pulled back from education. Do you see any parallel between that and the oversight that has been pulled back where voting rights are concerned? Because that's happened in the South, and it's something that a lot of groups, particularly the NAACP, were very concerned about.
It's a huge problem. Oversight by the federal government, by the Office of Civil Rights at the Justice Department, is one of the ways we kept these consent decrees in place. It was a way that we made sure that the progress that had been made, that we fought so hard for, didn't recede as quickly as it came. It's a huge problem. We're doing a fireside chat at the Harvard Club in Washington, D.C. On March 23rd, we're going to be doing a book signing at Lexington Market that's sponsored and hosted by Urban Reads, a Baltimore local bookstore. I'm looking forward to this important conversation both in Washington, D.C., but more importantly, right here at home in Baltimore.
Through Vignaraja, thank you very much, Through.
Thank you.
Dr. Santelises, can we just get a quick word with you? Can we just ask you a couple questions about the recent MCAP scores for math that came out for the school system?
You know, we have contacted you whenever you have had questions.
No, you have not. That is not a true statement. I have emailed you.
That is a true statement, sir.
Well, tonight, a search for answers from Baltimore City Schools and the Maryland State Department of Education. It has been 3 weeks since Project Baltimore broke the story that 23 city schools had 0 students among those tested score proficient in math. Well, since then, we haven't heard from the city school CEO or the state superintendent about how they plan to help those students at those schools. So Project Baltimore went to them. See what happened tonight on Fox 45 News at 10.
Fox 45 News is following proposed cuts to the state's Boost program. That program provides scholarships to low-income families to send their students to private or charter schools. Governor Wes Moore is looking to cut $2 million from the program, saying he doesn't want to see public dollars going to private schools. While many Democrats are in favor of phasing out the Boost program, Senate President Bill Ferguson seems open to funding it.
In the nearly $7.5 billion that we spend on public education, $10 million on the Boost program doesn't seem like a heck of a lot. So, I think there's reason to think that we can do both and not just either or.
Now we invite you to join us for a special Your Voice, Your Future Crisis in the Classroom Town Hall, focusing on the relationships between crime, poverty, and education. It happens at Huber Memorial Church tonight at 7 p.m. You can also watch live on foxbaltimore.com.
Tracking our latest weather maker with occasional rain and drizzle this afternoon. There's even some severe weather that's out to the west. Let's go ahead and put that in motion on the national view. There's snow, there's ice. So I guess it's kind of coming through with a relative whimper for us. There will be some on and off showers into the evening hours and then probably some drizzle overnight. But the real bad weather, wintry wise, well to our north. Then, of course, the severe weather down to our south and west. The drier air, that will get here by tomorrow afternoon. So that latest weather maker, once again, strong out to our west, then diminishing and actually probably reforming into a coastal system on Tuesday. And that's going to sweep all the moisture out of here. And by Tuesday afternoon, we're back to sunshine and milder temperatures once again. 45 right now, another one of those down days in the up and down pattern that we've been in. Clouds, we've had some rain, some drizzle. The wind chill now at 41, temperatures in the 40s. Pretty much everywhere except Easton, you're now at 50 degrees. And there's the warmth down to our south and west. When the sun comes back out, we're going to get into some of that. So future scan overnight tonight, you see the rain. There could even be maybe well north up towards the PA line, a couple of sleet pellets and some of the heavier bands that may come through, or maybe even a wet snowflake. Outside of that, I think by about midnight and thereafter, it's just kind of patchy drizzle. And then for tomorrow, some morning drizzle here and there, and then clearing skies after that. Breezes pick up. High temperatures going to be back into the 50s after a day mainly spent in the 40s today, near 60 for Wednesday, Thursday, 66. Could see a slim chance of a shower. Rain showers back. Cooler day on Friday, 52, and then into the 50s and drier for the weekend.
That sense of humility, that sense of humanity.
Loved ones continue to reflect on the life of former President Jimmy Carter as he enters a second week in hospice. The Energy Department releases its assessment of where the COVID pandemic might have originated. We have those findings. And new rules in Major League Baseball are creating some big changes in the game that fans can't help but notice. We'll explain coming up. With spring training now officially underway with live games in Florida and Arizona, it is our first look at new changes surrounding Major League Baseball, all in an effort to speed up the game and potentially produce more offense. Morgan Atzett joins us now with more bigger bags to be tagged on.
Yeah, you're going to see those. Not only are players and managers trying to get ready for the new season by knocking off the rust with workouts and games this spring, they also have new rules and ways of playing to adjust to in 6 weeks' time. Some need to break lifelong habits. There are 3 big things to watch this season that you will not be able to miss.
Going to be interesting first day of games, how the clock and you see the bigger bases out there, and we'll have drills and things like that to kind of simulate game situations with the new rules. Honestly, I have no idea how it's going to look. I think that I'm looking forward to it, though. I think those are positive changes.
When the pitch clock expires, umps will be wearing a buzzer that will vibrate. If they see a violation with the pitcher, that comes with some gray areas because every pitcher's process is different. Now back to the bases. They go from 15 to 18-inch squares, so much larger. And first base is now 3 inches closer, third to home as well. And the distance from first to second is 4.5 inches closer together, hence those steals and more offense. Mary?
I might be able to play. Thank you, Morgan. Well, looking ahead, Chris Rock is set to perform a live Netflix special from Baltimore. It's happening this Saturday. It's going to be at the historic Hippodrome Theater. We understand Chris Rock will be joined virtually by some very special guests, including Paul McCartney, Ice-T, and Amy Schumer, who hails from Baltimore, Towson, really. Tickets are already sold. You can watch the event on Netflix beginning at 9:30. Again, it's live. The federal government still trying to tame inflation, still ahead. A new survey of economists and when the country could hit a recession.
A new bill would increase the state minimum wage to $15 an hour this year. I'm Olivia Danson. Coming up next, find out why the bill is raising concerns.
Some hints this week about what may happen with the 2024 race for the White House. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington to show you.
We are following some breaking news from North Baltimore, where police are investigating a shooting. The scene is on East Cold Spring Lane and York Road. We understand police have found a man who has been shot in the leg. Baltimore police say they were already near that scene responding to a crash when they heard gunshots. The man shot is at the hospital right now. No word on a suspect.
Well, the evening commute continues on a bit of a rainy note. You're looking at live pictures from Towson, Baltimore, and also Ocean City. This weather maker is the start of what will be another roller coaster week. Thank you for staying with Fox 45. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers here tracking this weather maker as it approaches our region in the next couple of
the storm
hours.
system coming through the next couple of hours through about midnight tonight, then some drizzle into tomorrow morning, and then we're back to the mild weather again. So after an up and down weekend, you remember the snow and then the 50s and the sun yesterday. Well, we do it again today with maybe not snow, but some rain and 40s, and you can actually see some of the showers that are just off to the west of Baltimore across the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Allegheny Plateau. And there's even worse with this system that's out to the west, including some tornado watches across the Ohio Valley and then the wintry weather that's off to the north. But for us, it does not look like we're going to get any of that. We are just going to get, again, some of the wet weather, and that's not so great for a PM commute. On and off showers around with mainly just clouds reported BWI, Aberdeen, Annapolis, Easton, and Westminster with temperatures all in the 40s to around 50. But the next several hours through 5, 6, 7 o'clock, temperatures gradually falling through the 40s with occasional rain and drizzle. You'll have to have your umbrellas out and take it slow and easy. I'm going to let you know how long we're going to hold on to the rain and what comes beyond it and how much more up and down we have to endure in a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Jonathan. Right now, more than a dozen people are hurt and hundreds of buildings have been damaged after a line of severe storms sweep through Oklahoma and parts of Kansas. Several tornadoes were reported overnight. Much of that damage is in the town of Norman, Oklahoma. That's about 20 miles south of Oak City.
My wife went to the neighbors to get in a shelter. Wood and debris started flying and hitting things, so I jumped in the back seat of a car in the garage real quick.
Well, rescue efforts unfolding right now and are being complicated by downed trees and power lines.
Meanwhile, a winter wonderland in parts of California after a powerful storm pounded the state with heavy snow and rain this weekend. In Southern California, folks just trying to dry off after heavy rain led to flooding and power outages. Rare snowfall also blanketing several low-lying areas of the region.
Never heard of it up here in San Diego County. It's surprising. You don't see this often. So, yeah, it's really cool.
You can stay on top of this week's roller coaster weather with the free WBFF Weather Authority app. Go to your app store and search for WBFF to get started.
And turning now to your session 2023 coverage as Governor Moore pushes to raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by this October, much sooner than the current law calls for.
The governor and Baltimore County Executive John Olszewski testified in front of the House Economic Matters Committee this afternoon, showing support for the Fair Wage Act.
Olivia Dance joins us live from Annapolis right now with the latest from that hearing. Olivia, was anything decided?
Yeah, well, the hearing wrapped up just a couple of hours ago, and while there are many in favor of this bill, there are also several concerns, especially when it comes to the impact that this bill could have on small businesses.
The biggest problem with the minimum wage going to $15 an hour and the acceleration of it is that this is going to hurt small businesses because they're going to have to make a choice. The choice is, do I raise prices or do I fire people?
That was taxpayer watchdog David Williams, who is concerned accelerating increasing the minimum wage will put pressure on small businesses to increase their prices, which will ultimately be felt by consumers. Now, the Fair Wage Act would increase the state minimum wage to $15 an hour by October of this year, sooner than current law calls for. Today, Governor Moore and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski testified before the Economic Matters Committee in support of the bill. The bill would not only accelerate increasing the minimum wage this year, but starting in 2025, the bill would index the minimum wage based on inflation with a 5% per year cap. Governor Moore is defending indexing, saying it's an important component of the bill.
Well, it's important because it adds a measure of predictability for our businesses. You know, I think one thing that we're seeing is this bill, as constructed, it doesn't just support workers and making sure that people are getting paid fair wages for the work that they're doing, but it's also letting the businesses know that we as a government are going to be working with them.
And again, if passed, this bill would take effect in October of this year, and David Williams says the impact would be felt quickly within months. However, there are still several steps before this bill would actually become law, and of course, we will continue to stay on it. But for now, reporting live in Annapolis, I'm Olivia Dance, Fox 45 News.
Olivia, thank you. Making headlines, another earthquake strikes Turkey. 29 buildings collapsed this morning after a 5.6 magnitude quake in southeast Turkey. At least one death is confirmed. 3 weeks ago, more than 50,000 people were killed in Turkey and Syria following 2 earthquakes.
Well, the jury in former South Carolina attorney Alec Murdaugh's double murder trial will visit the scene where his wife Maggie and son Paul were killed. They'll go sometime this week to the Murdaugh family's 1,700-acre estate in Islandton, South Carolina. The visit comes at the request of the defense, saying jurors will be able to visualize the testimony better after seeing the property. Prosecutors objected to the request, arguing the estate looks different now.
If anything, it may confuse the issues again because the property has changed since the night of June 7th, 2021.
Well, the distance between the home and the dog kennels has been discussed multiple times during the trial to determine whether Murdaugh and the family, or whether Murdaugh had time to fatally shoot his wife and son. Again, a charge he denies.
Well, the nation reflects on former President Jimmy Carter's lifetime of service as family members continue their support during his time in hospice. The 98-year-old is in his second week of hospice care. He's at his home in Plains, Georgia. During a service at the Baptist church where Carter regularly taught Sunday school, his niece Kim told parishioners her uncle's heart isn't heavy.
One day, you know, he's going to meet Christ. And he knows it. And our hearts are heavy. But his isn't.
After Carter's one term as president, he and his wife Rosalind opened the Carter Center in 1982, promoting charity work and tackling human rights and health issues around the world. Family members say he remains in good spirits. Be the first to know about breaking news by signing up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com. Click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the station tab.
It is a busy week ahead of the world of politics, especially when looking at early action in the race for the White House.
Well, did the First Lady make it clear that President Biden will run again? And is one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters of the past ready to challenge him?
Sinclair's chief political correspondent, Scott Thuman, has more.
Florida correctly prohibits driver's licenses for illegal aliens. I think my opponent's 40% tax increase, that will cost jobs.
Basically, what Biden is saying is if you don't agree with him, then he views you as an enemy of the state.
He's long positioned himself a probable 2024 candidate, and a new book out Tuesday backing that up. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis still trailing in a potential primary matchup behind the man he used to cheerlead, former President Trump. New Fox polling shows Trump on top at 43%, DeSantis at 28%, and the rest of the potential field in single digits. The competition could become clearer when Trump and Nikki Haley, who just announced, speak at CPAC Wednesday, the Conservative Political Action Conference. But could too many contenders make winning the White House harder?
We have to come together as a party. We saw big races lost this cycle because of Republicans refusing to support other Republicans.
Republicans also insisting they're up against a negative narrative pushed by the White House, pointing to that toxic Ohio train crash. Democrats blaming Trump for rolling back rail regulations, even though Washington Post analysis concluded none of Trump's actions contributed to that particular accident. Meanwhile, more signs that President Biden is serious about staying in office a second term.
Is there any chance at this point that he's not going to run?
Not in my book.
Though Biden non-committal when asked on that same day.
My intention hasn't been from the beginning to run, but there's too many other things I have to finish in the near term before I start a campaign.
Yet polling indicates most voters don't want to see a Biden-Trump rematch, which would be Trump's third run at the White House and Biden's fourth. On Capitol Hill, I'm Scott Thuman.
Economists are speaking out about the state of the U.S. economy, why they say it's not a matter of if, but when a recession could hit.
Often called a conspiracy, the lab leak COVID origin theory is now gaining prominence by the day. I'm Christine Frizzell with what we're learning.
The source of COVID-19 to this day remains an unsolved mystery. However, what appears to be clear is that it originated in China. Well, now, two government agencies are backing that theory that the virus did leak from a lab in China. National correspondent Christine Frizzell reports.
Looming large over the early days of 2020, questions about a strange virus spreading throughout China. In particular, how and where it started. Though many leading voices on the matter for years pushed the wet market theory.
I think the most likely mechanism by which SARS-CoV-2 arose was a natural process of transfer from an animal to humans.
Meanwhile, there was harsh backlash for those who suggested it may have leaked from a lab, the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Wuhan also has China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that works with the world's most deadly pathogens, to include, yes, coronavirus.
The New York Times blasting Senator Tom Cotton for repeating the, quote, fringe theory. The Washington Post labeling it as a conspiracy theory that was already debunked. Sinclair also reported on the idea back in May of 2021, following a report from scientists at the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory in California.
That assessed as plausible the theory that COVID-19 originated in a Chinese laboratory.
The Wall Street Journal reporting the U.S. Department of Energy is now joining the FBI in leaning into the lab leak theory as the most likely origin of COVID-19. The White House says it's largely because of the actions of President Biden.
President Biden specifically requested that the national labs, which are part of the Department of Energy, be brought into this assessment because he wants to put every tool at use to be able to figure out what happened here.
Investigations led by Republicans in Congress also now underway, not just into what they call a cover-up from the Chinese Communist Party, but the groupthink mentality led by doctors here at home.
The irony and the tragedy is that in the name of science, these so-called scientists were acting anti-scientifically. They were trying to squelch debate and discussion and enforce their view.
Views changing once again, leading to yet another shift in the science. I'm Christine Frizzau reporting.
And we'd like you to join the national conversation. Do you have confidence in the U.S. government to investigate the origins of COVID-19? Yes or no? Take out your phone, open up the camera, and point the QR code at your screen. You'll be able to weigh in on our national question of the day. And here's the latest right now in Maryland's fight against the pandemic. The state has recorded 10 more deaths, sadly. 576 new infections have also been recorded in Maryland. And the state's positivity rate continues to go down. Some good news, down at 7.3%. 371 people are hospitalized in Maryland with the virus. This is interesting news for you happening right now. We're taking a live look over the National Mall in Washington, D.C. D.C.'s famed cherry blossoms are in stage 1 of their bloom after last week's record high temperatures. Now, listen to this. Peak bloom generally doesn't happen to the end of March, many times in April, first week, second week of April. So this is one of the earliest first stage blooms on record at number 4. The earliest ever was February 13th. How about that? So, Jonathan, as we look at this, could this be bad for the cherry blossoms this year?
Well, I'm hoping that we don't have a big chill down or a lot of wind, because that can often really kind of stifle some of those blossoms. But as they're elongating and coming out, actually, thus far, it looks like some more mild weather to help those blossoms along after a record warm February. So HD radar showing us Frederick out to Hagerstown. There is some more rain that's going to help to feed some of those blossoms some water. And you can see out to the west, actually got the radar off out here in the Ohio Valley for now, but you can see a tornado watch. And here's the reason why. As we put the national view on, you can see, again, there's even some warnings that are kind of intermixed with some of this stuff across portions of Ohio. Lots of wind. These are wind advisories and high wind warnings that are south of that. And then there's the wintry weather on the north side up into New York State. Now, we are not seeing that, but we are dealing with, again, some on and off rain, and another round is going to be coming in within the next hour or so with this stuff that's out to our west. The mix and snow stays to our north, and eventually drier air moves in, but probably is going to take until tomorrow afternoon to fully get here. So the latest weather maker, again, having a lot of gusto here west of us, and then it kind of transfers energy off the east coast and eventually shoots out east and away. But what that means for us, again, is some rain through about midnight tonight, maybe some patchy drizzle after that. And then the umbrellas can be put away into tomorrow. Back on the downside of the roller coaster today, we were in the 50s yesterday, 45 right now at Baltimore's BWI. Wind chill at 41 degrees, winds out of the east-southeast at 8 miles an hour. Temperatures are coolest north and east and warmest south and west, and that continues to trend as you look at the wider view of the national or regional map, I should say, with temperatures in the 50s and 60s down into portions of Virginia, Richmond, Roanoke, as well as into West Virginia. For Charleston, temperature at 60 right now. And that warmer air is going to move in for tomorrow, but overnight tonight, again, the on and off rain, maybe some drizzle through about midnight. Thereafter, it's just some patchy drizzle, and temperatures going to be settling close to 40. And by tomorrow afternoon, we gradually clear out once again with high temperatures getting into the 50s. So your 7-day forecast, 57 degrees for tomorrow after a little bit of morning drizzle here and there, probably barely even enough to keep the roads wet. We increased some sun with that high of 57, 58 and partly sunny skies for Wednesday, 67 and passing sprinkle for Thursday, 52 on Friday. On and off rain is back and it's a lot cooler. Some computer models have been trying to say that there could be some snow on the front end of that, especially well north. But with temperatures at 67 on Thursday, I think we may be crying wolf talking about that. But nonetheless, it's something that we're going to watch. And then low and mid 50s and sunshine into the weekend.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. Coming up at 5 o'clock on Fox 45, when will the city take control of the Baltimore Police Department? The new development tonight in the transition process. Also, if you include tuna in your meals, listen up. We test popular brands to see the amount of mercury in them. A survey says the majority of economists think the United States will have a recession later this year than previously forecast. The National Association for Business Economics based their data of 48 responses from economists. About 58% of them think a recession could happen sometime this year, but only about 25% of economists surveyed think a recession will start by the end of March. That's down from 52% who thought the same in a previous survey. It was conducted in December. Well, fish is an important part of our diets. Nutritionists often recommend 2 to 3 servings a week, as a matter of fact. To get that, however, many people reached out for canned tuna. But there are some serious health concerns around mercury in tuna. Tom Rogers shows us Consumer Reports tested popular brands of canned tuna to find out how worried we should be.
Well, it's cheap, convenient, full of protein and omega-3 fatty acids, and a classic staple in our lunches, canned tuna. But the nutritional powerhouse from the sea comes with a warning.
Tuna, just like other fish, can contain mercury. And if you eat a lot of fish, you can expose yourself to this potentially dangerous heavy metal.
High amounts of mercury can lead to problems with fine motor coordination, speech, sleep, even walking. Because so many eat tuna and because of its potential risks, Consumer Reports tested 5 popular brands of canned tuna for mercury. And the results, popular albacore tuna had the highest mercury levels, while light varieties had relatively low mercury on average. The results varied, though, from can to can.
There were some cans we tested that had high amounts of mercury. And because you cannot tell which can that you purchase has high amounts of mercury, you may be possibly exposing yourself to dangerous levels of this heavy metal.
The National Fisheries Institute said the mercury levels were well below the limit that the FDA allows in canned tuna, and these products are safe to consume. Now, if you're concerned about limiting the amount of mercury, Consumer Reports says up to 12 ounces a week of Bumblebee Chunk Light, Chicken of the Sea Chunk Light, Safe Catch Wild Elite, and Starkiss Chunk Light tunas are the safer choices among all these products tested. And there are other types of seafood that are nutritious and have naturally lower levels of mercury, including oysters, salmon, and sardines. Of course, here in Baltimore, we'd like to point to the crab meat as a top choice, but Consumer Reports didn't actually have that in their study. Tom Rogers, Fox 45 News.
All right, the latest weather making moving through, and another one actually coming through on Friday. Notice all the rain here as we take a quick look at your weekend forecast. I know it's several days away, but everyone's always planning. On and off rain for Friday. There could even be, our European computer model says, a little bit of snow or sleet at the front end there of it, especially well north. I think it's going to be too warm to start to really get that. And then Saturday and Sunday are going to be nice and dry days, although turning blustery with a bit of a cooling trend. 57 on Saturday, 51 on Sunday.
Jonathan, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, how much will a new agency cost taxpayers and what will it do for them? The latest on Governor Moore's plans for the Department of Service and Civic Innovation. What impact will continued crime have on the mayor's re-election chances? Take a closer look at the city's response to Mayor Brandon Scott's crime plans.
Both Democrats and Republicans pushing juvenile justice reforms, how both parties will try to tackle the statewide crime crisis in Annapolis this week, and what one expert thinks it'll all come down to.
When will the city of Baltimore take control of its own police department? A new resolution that could change the timeline for a major public transition.
Is Mayor Scott losing voters' trust? A closer look at how his response to violent crime could decide if he has a shot at re-election.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
Violent crime continues to plague Baltimore. A 21-year-old man identified as Mason Kelly was shot and killed in a triple shooting this weekend. The two other victims are an 18-year-old and 19-year-old.
And then across the city just 30 minutes later, a 29-year-old was shot and killed. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Mary Bubala.
I'm Kai Jackson. We have team coverage right now following the latest on the crime crisis in Baltimore and across the state. We look into how crime is being addressed and the impact it could have on leadership in the city.
And that coverage begins with Alexa Ashwell with more on how state lawmakers are tackling a surge in juvenile crime. Alexa?
Yes, in just several days, lawmakers in Annapolis will hear several bills related to juvenile crime. And to give you an idea, some perspective, in Baltimore so far this year, nearly 24 juveniles have been charged with either homicide, robbery, or a weapons charge.
Two of the three victims in this weekend's triple shooting turned homicide were teens, yet another set of young people falling victim to violence here in Baltimore. And in some cases, it's been at the hands of other juveniles, like the 16-year-old charged with the murder and attempted murders of 5 high school students who were shot outside the Edmondson Village Shopping Center just last month.
So I think we can anticipate that there will be more juveniles involved in violent crime or crime in general because they don't have the education. And secondly, there are no consequences for their actions. There are no effective consequences.
Former FBI agent, now law enforcement consultant Tyrone Powers, weighing in on the juvenile crime crisis and the legislation lawmakers in Annapolis have drafted in the midst of calls for more to be done about it. From the Democrats, the Youth Equity and Safety Act, which would end the practice of automatically charging juveniles as adults in serious crimes like murder, and the Youth Accountability and Safety Act, which would prevent anyone under the age of 25 from being charged with felony murder. From the Republicans, a bill that would change the age a child cannot be charged with any crime from 13 to 11 years old, and the Juvenile Gun Offenses Accountability Act of 2023, which would allow children as young as 10 years old to be charged with gun crimes.
And I think we're arguing among lawyers and politicians, and I think some people do understand that perpetrators at a certain age probably have been led to that behavior. But on the other hand, I think, again, that we don't put the victim at the center enough.
Powers stressing the need for juvenile justice legislation that ensures consequence and corrects behavior.
So before you vote on legislation, talk to the victims of crime in Baltimore City. Talk to those people who have lost loved ones, those who have been victims of robberies and rapes, and those who have people dealing in open-air drug markets right out in front of their door where they can't even walk out the front door because they may not want mass incarceration, but they do want consequences that changes the behavior that allows them to live their fragile lives.
Lawmakers will hear those bills this Thursday. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. Well, the youth crime crisis impacting beyond the city. Last week, a teenager was shot and killed in Baltimore County.
He was everything. Right when I heard that he died, I shut down.
The community gathering last night to remember Trayshawn Harmon, the 17-year-old from Baltimore, was gunned down just outside the Towson Town Center. It is the latest in a series of crimes that have rocked Baltimore County.
In Washington, D.C. last week, an elderly woman was the victim of an attempted carjacking. The suspect is a juvenile. The woman, who didn't want to be identified, says the 15-year-old ran up to her with a gun and demanded her car keys. When she refused and called for help, she says members of the community came to her aid, catching the teen until police arrived to arrest him. Well, the city of Baltimore is trying to assume control of the city police department. City voters approved a charter amendment to move the department from state and local control in November. Well, tonight, a city councilman is introducing a new resolution which could impact that transition process. Jeff Abel joins us live right now with details of this plan. Jeff?
Well, you know, in November, voters voted overwhelmingly to give the city control of its own police department. And now, almost 3 months later, the city still doesn't have control over its police department. As you may know, Baltimore is one of 2 jurisdictions in the country where the state controls the local police department. In November, 82% of voters voted to give the city full control of the department. But earlier this month, the mayor suggested the move could be delayed until next year. That drew fire from other city leaders who are now urging the state to make the final needed change to the city charter immediately.
We don't need to wait till December this year. We don't need to wait till next year. The voters have spoken, and right now we don't have full control of the Baltimore City Police Department. It's in between the state granting us the right to have full control.
Well, in a matter of minutes, the council is supposed to hear a resolution now introduced that is urging the state to give full control to the city immediately. We're live at City Hall. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Thanks. Well, a man shot in the leg in North Baltimore today around 1 this afternoon as officers were responding to a car crash on York Road near Cold Spring Lane. They were notified about a shooting nearby. Some of the officers heard the gunshots. A short distance from the crash, they found a man who had been shot in the leg. He was taken to the hospital for treatment. Anybody with information on the shooting asked to call Baltimore police.
This morning, a man was stabbed to death in East Baltimore. Police say after 6:30, officers responded to Port Street. That's near East Madison Street. They found a 54-year-old man who was stabbed multiple times in his upper body. He was taken to a nearby hospital where he was pronounced dead. At the start of the day, 41 people have been killed in Baltimore this year, 11 fewer than the number killed this time last year. 79 people were shot and have been shot yet survived shootings in the city compared to 107 last year in 2022.
It is election day for voters in Chicago. That's tomorrow. With election season around the corner, some experts say Mayor Brandon Scott could be on shaky ground come re-election time. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live with how the outcome in Chicago's election could be an indicator for things to come here. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mary, so we know that voters are really taking a hard look at public safety, and crime is becoming a top priority. As we look at cities across the country, many leaders are finding themselves with a constituency who are unhappy with the public safety policies that are in place. We know that Chicago's incumbent mayor Lori Lightfoot faces a crowded election tomorrow. We have the New Orleans mayor facing a recall, all fueled by frustration over public safety. In November here in Baltimore City, we saw more than 70% of the voters reject Marilyn Mosby, the top prosecutor in the city in the time, and her progressive prosecution policies. Now we're seeing Mayor Brandon Scott look to re-election, and this is the same person who made public safety a cornerstone of his campaign, vowing that he would get homicides under 300 within the first year in office. That was a campaign promise made, but he has yet to keep that promise to the voters who elected him, hoping that they would see some change in Baltimore City. We spoke with a political expert who says that really what happens in Chicago could be an indicator for where voters stand come this time next year when they're looking to elect and potentially change the leadership here in Baltimore.
If I was Mayor Scott, I'd be paying close attention to how things work out in Chicago related to the primary and the general. If Lori Lightfoot doesn't make the runoff, that's a 5-alarm fire for the mayor. That should be a warning sign. After a while, you can show a certain amount of frustration. People could say, yeah, the mayor's upset. Well, at a certain point, you also say, well, what are you going to do about the problem?
We're seeing some of the frustration from Mayor Brandon Scott. We see his comments at news conferences, at various crime scenes. But really the question is, will something change, and will that happen in time to regain the trust of Baltimore City voters when it comes time to make that selection next year?
And Mackenzie, what about the actual election in Maryland? There is some serious talk about the primary getting moved.
Yeah, right now it's scheduled for April of 2024. We know that that's also coincides with Passover. Mayor Brandon Scott and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski they've asked state leaders to look at rescheduling that election to ensure that everyone can participate. Today we're learning that House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson say that they will work with the State Board of Elections to look at rescheduling a date. However, one has not yet been announced. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. And that brings us to our question of the day. If elections were held today, would you vote for Mayor Brandon Scott for re-election? So far, 98% of those who responded say no. You can weigh in by going to foxbaltimore.com. New information as a federal judge sets a date for Marilyn Mosby's trial. Jury selection is set to start on October 31st, and the trial itself will begin November 2nd. The former city state's attorney faces 4 federal charges related to the purchase of 2 vacation homes in Florida, including perjury and making false statements on a loan application.
Some wicked weather in Oklahoma and Kansas. Communities shaken by a series of storms and tornadoes this weekend. Norman, on the outskirts of Oklahoma City, was one of the hardest hit areas. You can see roofs ripped off, cars flipped, and debris strewn about that entire area. Our sister station out of Oklahoma City reports there were no deaths, but 12 people have been treated for injuries at local hospitals. Now, what's left of those storms now working their way toward Maryland. You're looking at live pictures outside Baltimore and Towson. We are not expecting tornadoes here, of course, but Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers has the latest on the rain he is tracking tonight. Jonathan?
Yeah, on and off rain and drizzle in the forecast. You see from Damascus to Gaithersburg, Silver Spring, Eldersburg, Westminster, getting the roads wet again as you head out west toward Hagerstown. And there's still even a bit of severe weather with this system that's out in the Ohio Valley. Some tornado watches are in effect for portions of Ohio. Been very active severe weather early season there. And then you can also see that there's some winter watches, warnings, advisories that are to the north. So thankfully that's not here, but we do have the rain, and it's chilly rain. Temperatures up to 51 actually before the rain moved in today. Now the clouds and temperatures in the 40s, and it looks like the day planner into the overnight hours, 45 degrees, occasional rain at 10 p.m. More rain, 40 degrees, and a chance of some light rain and drizzle, I think, by about 2 a.m. at 41. I'm going to let you know how long we're going to hold on to this kind of cool and clammy weather and when temperatures could threaten 70 again. That's up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Jonathan, thank you. Well, over the weekend, yes, we saw some flurries in our area. This was the scene in Parkville. We want you to help us tell the weather stories in your area when it is safe to do so. Send us a picture or video through Chime In. Head to foxbaltimore.com/chime in.
Raising the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour, the possible impact of a push in Annapolis.
As state leaders move to end a private school scholarship program, we are seeing similar battles across the nation, the national debate over school choice.
How much will a new government agency cost, and what will it benefit you? We'll have a closer look at Governor Moore's Department of Service and Civic Innovation.
Fox 45 News, winner of 17 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
This will help us all as a state to find a measure of shared purpose. This department will be the hub of all of our efforts to build a Maryland that serves.
Since taking office, one of Governor Westmore's top priorities has been launching a new State Department of Service and Civic Innovation. The governor proposes $18 million to be put toward the department, saying it will focus on promoting service and volunteerism in Maryland. Now, under his plan, the money will also support specific programs, including a service year option for high school graduates, allowing them to get paid while learning real-world skills that will better prepare them for the workforce. While the governor is promising big things from the agency, we're digging deeper into what its impact would be on the state and if it's worth that price tag.
And tonight we are joined by Christopher Summers from the Maryland Public Policy Institute. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
How could this Department of Service impact people's daily lives here in Maryland?
Well, I think the big concern about this is there's still a lot of vagueness to this program, such as, the ongoing budget of this, the expansion of this program, who's going to do any sort of supervising, what are the actual jobs that people will be put into place, and especially in, a labor market right now where there's scarcity in the labor market. And so you need the experience in real world jobs and training in areas where the vacancies currently exist, not vacancies that government by itself decide which are the important vacancies.
Mr. Summers, the governor put an initial $18 million price tag to get that department up and running, and that's just the start. What financial burden could this new department have on Marylanders, if any? And what would it take for the investment to be worth it, in your estimation?
Well, sure, it's the idea sounds great and grand, but there's a lot of hidden cost. And when you talk about hidden cost, I'm talking about the regulatory implications into this, specifically into the small business community, where there's a lot of hidden regulatory costs that's a burden on our small business community, and that should be of concern. Again, any labor market that we're currently in with scarcities, what we do not want, is government to be the employer as the last resort when you have labor shortages everywhere. And again, as we know, as history has shown, whenever a government program has started, it always expands. And eventually that ends up to higher costs to the taxpayers, and especially in Maryland.
Do you think there is better use for this funding, for example, going to other government agencies that are struggling a bit, or an entirely different program for an issue in the state that's not being addressed?
Well, I think the priority should be not expanding government in Maryland. It should be actually reducing the size of it, and more of a priority, the funding should be allocated to creating a better tax environment in Maryland, so we can attract more investment, more employers that bring more jobs, and more importantly, of creating a competitive tax structure for the small business and the individuals in the state.
All right, Christopher, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, we're tracking rain moving through the Baltimore area right now. This is a live look at the Inner Harbor and also Towson. Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers is here with the look at what we can expect.
Yeah, just a dreary day out there. That's hard to start Monday on a day like today.
Yeah, Mother Nature and a case of the Mondays.
Yes.
And there you go. And it looks like more rain on and off through the overnight hours, but it does taper to some drizzle late night, and then things could actually get pretty nice for tomorrow again. So that roller coaster ride continues. Did make it 51 before the first little round of light rain moved in, and now there's another one that's around Charlestown, Frederick, also Westminster. You're getting in on some of that currently. And that does continue, as you saw there on the loop, move eastbound for us. And it looks like there will be more on and off rain as we head into the early overnight hours. At least we're not seeing what they're getting in places like Ohio. Look at that. We've got the yellow. That is a tornado watch that's in effect. And we'll continue to see, again, some of these dying, stronger storms move over us overnight. And that's going to lead us to some rain, which means it is going to be kind of a nasty early overnight into about midnight. The rest of the afternoon commute's going to be a little bit wet, so leave some extra time, pack your patience. Don't have the wintry side of this system. That is off to the north where the cold air is situated in portions of New York State and New England. And then eventually drier air does punch in behind this as this kind of lends itself to a little bit of a more coastal system by Tuesday, and that kind of swoops east quickly. So we get the rain, the drizzle, and then the clearing for tomorrow. And actually a couple of nice days before we get the next system in that could have some more rain around here. So you're getting the picture. Every couple of days gets active. Toyota H8 Harbor Skycam right now, it's 48. You're going to need a jacket. Probably going to even need to pack your umbrella along if you're headed out, as the rain is going to be increasing for us. Winds out of the southeast at about 5 miles an hour. Humidity at 61%. Wind chill in the 40s as well. Temperatures are kind of damp and cool, right near 40 degrees at Elgin, 44 here in Bel Air, 48 at Baltimore, and 48 degrees as you head down into Annapolis. The warmth situated just south and west of us in the 50s to around 60 where the sun comes back out. And I think we'll be getting into a little bit of that for tomorrow. Now, I think all the snow and the mix stays off to our north. There could be a wet snowflake or a sleet pellet mixed in with these temperatures in the mid to upper 30s this evening up towards the state line. Actually, it's really more so just a rain effect for everybody. I think it's going to be all just kind of wet for most. And that goes into tomorrow morning at 5:45 a.m. with some leftover drizzle that'll hang out until about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and then breaking into some sunshine with highs in the 50s for tomorrow. So your forecast for tonight, 40 degrees, lots of clouds, occasional rain, then patchy drizzle overnight, 57. Morning gray and some patchy drizzle in the morning, especially early, and then increasing afternoon sun, 58 on Wednesday, 67 passing sprinkle here or there on Thursday. Another colder, rainy day on Friday before near normal into the weekend.
Jonathan, thank you. Lawmakers in Annapolis battling over the Fair Wage Act, the latest on the bill that could lead to a big hike in the minimum wage. Big changes coming to America's pastime. What you need to know about new rules in place before opening day at Camden Yards. We are just a month away from opening day here in Baltimore, but if you are paying attention to spring baseball, you'll notice some big changes in how the game is played. Sports Unlimited Morgan Atzett's here now with the latest on what could be a big change for baseball, and we should be on the lookout for it. Morgan?
Yeah, you can't miss it. Not only are players and managers trying to get ready for the new season, you got to knock off the rust, get those workouts and games in this spring, they also have to learn new rules and ways of playing in just 6 weeks' time. Some need to break those lifelong habits, and there are 3 big new rules to watch this season that you will not be able to miss with your eyes. The first, the pitch.
It's going to be interesting. First day of games, how the clock and you see the bigger bases out there, and we'll have drills and things like that to kind of simulate game situations with the new rules. Honestly, I have no idea how it's going to look. I think that I'm looking forward to it, though. I think there's positive changes.
When the pitch clock expires, umps will be wearing some sort of buzzer that will vibrate. So if they see a violation there with a pitcher, that's the gray area because every pitcher's process is different. Back to the bases, they go from 15 to 18-inch squares. They look like giant pizza boxes. So first base is 3 inches closer, the same from third to home. And the distance between first and second is 4.5 inches closer, hence more steals.
Morgan, thank you. Will a local charter school get to keep its doors open? Looking ahead to a vote tomorrow that could decide its fate.
Test scores continue to slip as Republicans and Democrats remain at odds with how to fix this crisis affecting classrooms from coast to coast. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington.
In session 2023 coverage, Governor Moore is pushing to raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by this October, sooner than current law calls for.
The governor and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski testified in front of the House Economic Matters Committee this afternoon, showing support for the Fair Wage Act.
Olivia Dance joins us live from Annapolis with the latest from that hearing. Olivia.
Well, Mary and Kai, the hearing wrapped up just a few hours ago, and while there are many in favor of this bill, there's also several concerns as well, especially when it comes to the impact that this bill could have on small businesses.
Anthony Clark is the co-owner of several restaurants, including Galway Bay in Annapolis. Both COVID and now inflation have put pressure on small businesses like his.
Natural influences caused by COVID and the lack of labor coming out of it already encouraged small businesses to pay more. So we, as a restaurant business in town, have very few percentage of our employees that are earning less than minimum wage.
And now the Fair Wage Act, a new bill proposed in Annapolis, would increase the state minimum wage to $15 an hour by October of this year, sooner than current law calls for.
Any increase or acceleration in the increase in minimum wage would put more pressures on small businesses. We already have increases in prices that we're negotiating, deliveries, utilities, energy, insurance, across the board. So it's just one more thing for a challenge for small business.
Clark says if this bill is passed, increasing the minimum wage would just put more pressure on small businesses, which taxpayer watchdog David Williams is advocating against.
A small business will have to raise prices on its consumers, or they're going to have to fire people. That's the flip side of this coin, is that if hiring people becomes more expensive, they won't hire as many people, or they may actually lay people off if they can't afford them.
On Monday, Governor Moore and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski testified before the Economic Matters Committee in support of the bill.
We're here in strong support of House Bill 549 to help make sure Maryland families can make ends meet.
The bill would not only accelerate increasing the minimum wage this year, but starting in 2025, the bill would index the minimum wage based on inflation with a 5% per year cap. Governor Moore is defending indexing, saying it's an important component of the bill.
Well, it's important because it adds a measure of predictability for our businesses. I think one thing that we're seeing is this bill, as constructed, it doesn't just support workers and making sure that people are getting paid fair wages for the work that they're doing, but it's also letting the businesses know that we as a government are going to be working with them.
Williams says not only is he concerned this bill will negatively impact small businesses, but it will also hurt consumers too.
When a small business raises their prices, that goes directly to consumers, that price increase. And when you have inflation still at a very high, 6%, that's going to affect people a lot more than if inflation was lower.
But Governor Moore disagrees and says passing the bill will create economic growth.
I think one thing we're going to see with the bill is as we increase wages for the workers, when we're talking about consumers, those are also the workers. These are also individuals who are going to go back out and they're going to spend money and they're going to go to restaurants and buy basic goods that we know, and the data is very clear, that one of the best ways of being able to create a measure of economic growth and economic churn is to provide our employees more disposable resources.
And again, this bill would take effect in October of this year. And David Williams says that the impact of the bill would be felt quickly within months. However, there are still several steps before this bill would actually become law. And of course, we will continue to stay on it. But for now, reporting live in Annapolis, I'm Olivia Dance, Fox 45 News.
An Anne Arundel County police officer assaulted over the weekend. Just after 9 on Saturday, officers responded to a call for a fight at the Green Turtle on Solomon's Island Road in Edgewater. Police say a group of men was refusing to leave the property. When officers tried to get the group to leave, 25-year-old Gabriel Tyler allegedly put the officer in a headlock. Taylor backed down when the officer pulled out his taser. Taylor is facing multiple charges.
An elderly woman and a homeowner both arrested after police say the woman drove onto his property, hitting his cars on purpose. Now, this happened Saturday in Davidsonville when officers say 71-year-old Marlene Terwilliger intentionally drove her car onto Hugh Haythorne's property, hitting 2 cars. According to police, Haythorne responded by shooting at her multiple times with an AR-15 before she took off. Both were later taken into custody and are facing multiple charges. And here's a live look right now over Baltimore and Towson. It's been a cloudy day out there as some parts of the state seeing rain. Here's Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers.
Yeah, Kai, a really gray and kind of gloomy afternoon after a little bit of sun and make it up to 51 before all this stuff moved in. But now the afternoon commute looking kind of wet. Let's take a look at the HD radar. You can see from Westminster to Eldersburg down to Gaithersburg, Laurel, all the rain, and that continues to move east over, spreading the area once again for the PM commute. So although you're seeing mainly just some clouds, pretty much area wide right now, but there's a little raindrop on our Toyota East to Harbor Sky. Came at 43 with rain reported now at Westminster. We're starting to get wetter. Evening forecast for the rest of the commute. It looks like through the 5 and 6 p.m. hours, mid to upper 40s, occasional rain and drizzle. That lasts into the evening hours as well. I'm going to let you know how long that's going to be sticking around and when we could be seeing temperatures again nearing 70 degrees as we approach a record warm February. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
That motion passes with 10 in favor and 1 absent. So this conversation will pick up in the next upcoming meeting.
Tomorrow, the fate of a high-performing charter school in Baltimore will be decided. After an hours-long hearing last week, the school board decided to delay their vote on whether the Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys can keep its charter. City School CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises is urging the board to keep the school open, but the board had a list of concerns, including bringing in more certified teachers, improving special education services, and hiring a city-approved financial advisor. After the split vote, the board deferred action until their next meeting, which is tomorrow. The CEO of Baltimore Collegiate School tells FOX45 he's optimistic.
That's their job, to have concerns. And so I want them to work that out. I want them to be able to be comfortable with supporting us. But I implore them to just think about what we do for the city. There's lots of parents who thank us for turning their sons around.
Well, according to the school, graduation rates are above 90%, while city public schools have a graduation rate of 67%. The move to revoke the charter followed a review that found operational difficulties, including missing paperwork and data entry errors.
As the future of charter schools hang in the balance, lawmakers in Annapolis are battling over a program that could impact students' access to private schooling statewide. The governor pushing his plan to phase out the state's Boost program. The $10 million Boost budget is just 1/10 of 1% of Maryland's $8.8 billion public school budget. It provides scholarships to low-income families to send their students to private or charter schools if their school is failing. Governor Moore is looking to cut $2 million from the program, saying he doesn't want to see public dollars go to private schools. And while many Democrats are in favor of ending Boost, Senate President Bill Ferguson seems open to funding it.
In the nearly $7.5 billion that we spend on public education, $10 million on the Boost program doesn't seem like a heck of a lot. So, I think there's reason to think that we can do both and not just either or.
The fight over Boost funding here in Maryland, one of many of the political battles over school choice going on right now across the nation. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the latest.
In Illinois, increased spending on education resulting in lower test scores statewide.
We're spending a record amount of money on education right now, but our student outcomes are going down.
From 2019 to 2022, the state pumped close to $1 billion additional dollars into public schools. Over the same time period, data shows reading proficiency dropping 7%. Math scores slipping 6%. Last October, the organization opened the books, publishing a report analyzing Illinois teacher salaries, finding 500 educators made between $200,000 and $439,000 a year.
4 out of every 10 are below the poverty line, and so that kind of compensation in a school such as this, that is a moral outrage.
In Baltimore City, Maryland, one of the best funded public school systems in the country, 23 schools in the district had not a single student test proficient in math.
The GOP latching on to this frustration. Republican-led states across the country expanding school choice programs.
The debate over introducing school choice in Alabama heating up.
And not every public school is able to serve every single student.
Critics voicing concerns.
It literally is a question of how do we help our public schools? You certainly don't help them by removing $500 million from their revenues.
Earlier this year, Iowa passing some of the most expansive school choice programs in the country. Republican presidential contender Nikki Haley voicing her support for Iowa's program during a recent visit to the state.
We would not have problems in education if we put education back where it needs to be, in the hands of the parents. We have to have school choice all over this country.
Haley's comments, yet another indicator education will play a key role in the GOP's efforts to take back the White House in 2024. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Dr. Santelises, can we just get a quick word with you? Can we just ask you a couple questions about the recent MCAP scores for math that came out for the school system?
You know, we have contacted you whenever you have had questions.
No, you have not. That is not a true statement. I have emailed you.
That is a true statement, sir.
Well, tonight, a search for answers from Baltimore City schools and the Maryland State Department of Education. It has been 3 weeks since Project Baltimore broke the story that 23 city schools had 0 students among those tested score proficient in math. Since then, we haven't heard from the city school CEO or the state school superintendent about how they plan to help the students at those schools. So we went to them. See what happened tonight on Fox 45 News at 10.
Well, destruction in parts of Oklahoma and Kansas. We hear from people who say they were scared for their lives during a series of storms last night. A piece of clothing can change a life. We take a closer look at a group helping those getting out of prison get on the right path in tonight's Maryland Moment.
Martin Luther King stated in his lifetime that the next paradigm beyond the civil rights movement is economic empowerment. We have been so involved with crisis in the classroom about crime and education and poverty and the structural damages to families. Dr. King had a point. Until we lift these tides of boats in the economic space, not much will change. So join us this Monday, February 27th, from 7 to 8 p.m. at Hubel Memorial Facilities, where we will discuss economic opportunity, entrepreneurial advantages, and how people can finally begin to realize that they too can also share in the American dream of economic prosperity. Join me, Armstrong Williams, your moderator, and our very special guest.